Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be my how to deal with infant reflux video. So my little boy has quite severe reflux. He isn't medicated for it, and it is quite aggressive. Unfortunately, the first couple of weeks of his life was really painful for him, and even now he can get it quite badly. He vomits quite badly after every feed, but you know, we have definitely come up with some ways to deal with it now that he's almost 8 weeks old, and I thought that I would share that with anyone out there who is having a baby with reflux. If you think your baby might have reflux, please get it checked out by your doctor or your health professional. We suspected it and went and saw a doctor about it, and we're right. Look for things like unsettled behavior, constant crying in pain, not enjoying being laid flat. That was one thing that really gave it away for us. Gurgling after he is drinking or when he's laying down, sort of like a choking noise, a lot of vomiting. Those are all, you know, symptoms of reflux. You can also have silent reflux, which is where you get a lot of symptoms but without the vomiting, and definitely worth being checked out. So I'll give you a little bit of our backstory and then I'll give you the tips. So the first is we have a almost 8-week-old, and he was diagnosed with reflux at about 2.5 or 3 weeks. He was fully breastfed baby, so that was not what caused it. He just has quite severe reflux. We found that he was screaming for hours upon hours a day. He was making gurgly noises when he'd swallow. He was vomiting after most feeds, if not all feeds, quite, you know, projectile sometimes. He was very uncomfortable. And so we took him to the maternal health nurse, who recommended we see our GP, and she prescribed him Gaviscon and omeprazole, which is Losic. Gaviscon did nothing for him, it just made him constipated. And so we put him on the omeprazole and we have not looked back. It has been absolutely a godsend. I highly recommend it, or talk to your doctor about it if your child has reflux. We have found it incredibly helpful. So my first tip is to please do not panic if you think your baby has reflux. They will grow out of it generally by the time they are able to sit up by themselves. So, you know, between 3 and 6 months, most babies grow out of reflux. It's just the valve in their throat is just really immature and doesn't stay shut, so all of their food comes back up, and it can be quite painful for them. But it is not your fault. It's not something you've done. It is very, very common. It doesn't often cause pain in infants. Like your child can have reflux and you don't even know. But yeah, just don't blame yourself. It is super, super common and they will grow out of it. Next one is keep your baby upright after feeds. Now this can be really difficult because most people in the middle of the night especially, you want to feed your baby and lay them down. You need to keep them upright for, you know, 20 minutes or so. We do about 20 minutes. You can do 20 to 30 minutes. Some websites say 15 minutes. 20 minutes is a nice middle ground for us, and I'll just keep him on an elevated angle, not necessarily upright, but sort of elevated on an angle so that his body is lower than his head, and that generally will stop the reflux coming back up. Burp regularly when you feed. Every ounce if you bottle feed, and just regularly on the breast. They say breastfed babies do not get gassy. 100% a lie. Make sure that you are burping your baby, or at least trying to get that wind out. That will help a lot with making sure that the bubbles don't form in their stomach and bring up fluid with them. So that is really, really good, and it also helps with the gassiness and helping with colic and things like that anyway. If you are bottle feeding, use a slow flow teat, especially in the first 3 months. That is super important, so that they're not getting too much liquid at once, so that they, you know, have time to actually get the fluid down, get the liquid down, before it comes, so it doesn't come back up straight away. If it's too aggressive, it can come back up instantly. If you have a very strong letdown, if you are breastfeeding, it might help to hand express a little bit of milk before latching your baby, or pump for like a minute before latching your baby. Get rid of the very beginning of that foremilk, just so it's not such a gush into their mouth, because that can cause them to spit up as well. Another one that is super important is to put a wedge or something underneath their bassinet or their mattress on their bed to sort of elevate them just slightly. We actually have some towels that I've put into like a ramp because I couldn't find a wedge that fitted in his bassinet, and I've just put it under the mattress of his bassinet, and it helps to elevate him slightly, and that has made a humongous difference in his sleeping. He does not lay flat, which makes him so much more comfortable, and he will actually go to sleep in his bassinet now, in his little sleep nest, as opposed to before where he refused to lay down and go to sleep. If you tried to lay him down, he would absolutely hate it, and that was, you know, super important. And also, don't lay them flat for too long. We do lay him flat on his playmat. I do try and put a towel under his head sometimes, but obviously it's really important for him to lay flat to be able to learn to roll and things like that, and for tummy time. So we just don't do it for very long periods of time. We do it basically until he spits up or he gets upset, which, you know, happens. Another one is to use some sort of prop. I use a towel under their head for changing them. I know that it makes it a tiny bit more difficult, but their head being even that minutely elevated will make a huge difference in your baby throwing up when you're changing their bum, and it will also make the changing experience a little bit more pleasant for them, and they might not scream their heads off every time. When your baby's a little bit older, like my baby is now almost 8 weeks old, we actually use the breast pillow and lay him in the middle of it so that he is sort of up on like an angle to sit up and look at us, which he enjoys. Instead of just laying him flat on the bed or laying him flat on a mat, we will actually prop him up in the breastfeeding pillow, and he likes that. It's like a little lounge for him, and he sits there and he looks around, and it's quite enjoyable, and it's another use for your breastfeeding pillow. If you are to invest in any sort of swing or bouncer, get one that it is on a good angle, that's got a bit of a raised head. We have a swing and a bouncer. He did not used to enjoy them, but now he actually quite likes them for the most part, and it's because it keeps his head above his body, and so it's not a complete horror for them. If you get them a bouncer or a swing that lays them completely flat, like I think the Mama-Roo might lay them completely flat. One of the two lays them quite, or the bouncer or the Mama-Roo or whatever, lays them flat, and he would absolutely hate that. And so if your baby has reflux, do not put them anything flat. Make sure that everything that you put them in has a slight tilt, keeping their head above their body. You will need a lot of burp cloths. I'm just warning you now. You will need a lot of burp cloths. I used reusable nappies because I feel like burp cloths, they're quite pricey for what they are, and disposable nappies, not disposable, reusable nappies. We use reusable nappies. They're super cheap for a pack, and they're great. You can just chuck them in the wash over and over and over again. And just be prepared that you will probably get a lot of spit up on your clothes and on their clothes. So bibs are the best. Because even if they get a bit of spit up, you can wipe it with the bib. It's no big deal. Please see your doctor if you are not sure if your baby has reflux. I know you can self-diagnose, but it's really important to see your doctor, because if your baby needs to be medicated, if they are in a lot of pain with their reflux, it is so important for them to be seen. The medication we are on does not help with the vomiting. He still will chuck up, he will still spit up after every feed, but there is no pain involved anymore, and it makes such a big difference. If you do bottle feed your baby, make sure that you're looking for a reflux specific formula. That is going to help to keep a lot more of the feed down, because it will happen to stay in their stomach. It'll be thicker, it stays in their stomach a little bit easier. I will insert the one that we have used that we think is quite good. It did constipate our baby a little bit, but that's fine. He's got a particular sensitive stomach. A lot of people said that it didn't constipate theirs, and it is a pharmacy brand, so it is a little bit better than your drugstore brands. And finally, using some sort of dummy pacifier, soothe, whatever you want to call it. I have read a lot about that. It is sort of debatable, but for us it seems to help, because they can suck on something which produces the saliva, which then goes down their throat, and it stops stuff coming up and sort of coats their throat, makes them a bit more comfortable. So that is something that we have found really helpful. That is completely your choice, but it is something that we have found useful. Those are all my tips for babies who have reflux. If you have tips for babies that have reflux, please leave them in the comments down below for everyone else to read, and myself. Obviously, we are still learning, and I really appreciate it. I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Please don't forget to click subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!